An example of how this stuff works, and it's a very quick example. There are two basic kinds of law under the law of magic. There are two kinds of laws that govern the earth. One is called the law of the land, L-A-N-D. And we've heard that term, law of the land. Why do you use that term, the law of the land? Because that's where people live, is on land. But there's an opposing law which is far more important, far, far more powerful. It is called the law of water. It was developed under the old Druidic system in Europe, which can trace its history back through the Roman Empire, through the Vatican, and ultimately back to the Phoenician Canaanites in the Middle East, of what we today call Phoenicia. Cana was called back what we call today Israel and Lebanon. Syria, that was called Phoenicia, Cana. And the Phoenician Canaanites, the very word Cana, which we've all heard in relation to the Bible, Cana is a Phoenician word meaning bankers, merchant bankers. Well, the Phoenician Canaanites set up a system of merchant banking and had their Phoenician Canaanite symbols and words connected to their societies, their banking societies. We're talking about in the Middle East. And then through the Greece, and ultimately through Rome, and then into Britannia, and ultimately into this country comes an ancient Druidic, Phoenician, Canaanite magical system of finance, government, education, and all of it is right in front of you. But if you don't understand what the words are and what the words mean, you're never going to figure out how this stuff works. And I will guarantee you, no matter how educated you might think you are in the realm of business and government and education, I will guarantee you, you have no idea in the world how banks really work. And I will guarantee you, you have no idea in the world how government actually, in fact, works. We all have a cursory understanding of what we think is going on. That's not it. You need to understand that when even on your check, when you're writing a check, the place where you put your name on a check, look at that line, what you're signing on, and get a magnifying glass, and you will find that's not a solid line to sign your name on. That is written, it's a typed written sentence that's been honed down to microscopic size. Get a magnifying glass and read on a check what is said where you sign your name. That's why the attorneys tell you, you better check the small print. The small print is ultra small. Where you sign your name on a check is saying something. Go back and read it. Consequently, you need to understand that according to the old Phoenician Canaanite system, which we call today our judicial, educational and judicial system, there is no law in this country or in the Western world, no law, federal, state, county, city, commercial, it makes no difference. There is no law on the books anywhere in this country that applies to you as an individual creature. There is no law, because the people who designed the system thousands of years ago realized that there's two of you. There's the one that your mother gave birth to, that God created, so to speak, and even your mother didn't know what you were doing. Even your father and your mother have no idea what you're thinking or what you will do. You don't even know. So consequently, they have no control over you, your flesh and blood self. But somebody has to control this show, and so consequently, the ancient Phoenician Canaanites developed a system by which they would assign to every person a second you. And this is the way it works in America. There is two of you. Just as there are two states in this country, of every state is two states. You have the state of Nevada and Nevada State. You have Cal State, California State, and State of California. Not the same thing at all. California State, according to the law, is one thing. State of California is totally different. Has nothing to do with each other at all. It's the difference between being a lawyer and an attorney. Has nothing to do with them at all. It's totally separate words, means totally separate things. Consequently, when you understand how words and terms are used and symbols are used, Then we go back to the idea of the court, and as I said, there is no law in this country on any books that applies to you. None. All law in the Western civilization applies only to cooperations, co-ops. All law applies only to corporations, period. Across the board, end of sentence. Consequently, there is no law that applies to you personally, so consequently, the system has made each one of you a corporation. And how now do you distinguish which one, when someone's addressing you, that they're addressing you as the one that your mother gave birth to, or the corporate you? Very simple. According to British law, when you sign your name, upper and lower case, that is applying to your body. Your flesh and blood self is spelled, according to British and American law, upper and lower case, capital letter, lower case. That's you, your personal self. There is no law that can be applied to an upper and lower case name, period. No law at all can be applied to an upper and lower case name because there is no law over you. Therefore, every piece of important bills, insurance, driver's license, identification, taxes, I don't care what it is. If it's a piece of business, period, in any kind of way, shape, or form, your name must, by law, international maritime admiralty banking law, your name must appear in all capital letters. You will never get a bill or anything that has your name upper and lower case because there is no law that applies to an upper and lower case name, period. So if Sears is going to send you a bill, if you go into Baskin Robbins or Sears and you order a pair of shoes, what are you going to do? They're going to give you a ticket, and you're going to put it on your bill, and then they're expecting you to pay the bill. And consequently, they're going to charge you. Well, that's the same thing. You go into a courtroom. They're going to read out the charges, and the cop gave you the ticket, and you have been charged with speeding or whatever, and therefore you have to pay the charge. Well, once you understand that in America, according to our laws in America, you cannot pay a bill. Did you know that? According to international banking law, Americans cannot pay a bill. So when you say, well, I got to pay this, I'll pay that bill, well, that's a term that we use. But in point of fact, lawfully, you cannot pay a bill. You can discharge a debt. You cannot pay a bill. So consequently, you need to understand, what do you mean discharge a debt? Now it gets back to the court again. Now it gets back to the symbols and emblems of why the judge wears a black robe. Saturn, the god who is the inhibitor, the god of occult law, the mystical god Saturn, Lord of the Rings, who is in charge of and controls all occult law in the universe. This is why today we know that Saturn was referred to as El, E-L. El is a name that was given to the planet Saturn. And therefore, if you are worshiping Saturn, you represent the law, you are referred to in church today as an elder. How did you get to be an elder? You got to be an elder because you were one of the elites. How did you get to be an elite? You got elected. Because through elections, all of our system is based on occult, mystical words and terms going back to the planet Saturn, going back to the Phoenician Canaanite system of banking. Incidentally, where do you find a bank? We go to banks all the time. Where do you find a bank? Banks are on both sides of a river. They're called river banks. What does a river bank do? It directs the flow of the currency. Your money is referred to as the currency. This is why when you go to court, you have the current, electricity, because it's the juice. And if you don't have the juice, you don't have it. So if you don't have the juice, you can't capitalize. And the capital is a Latin word meaning money. Consequently, Caesar ruled from what was referred to in history books. Caesar ruled from up on the hill. It was called Capitol Hill, Capitoline Hill, with the Senate. You need to understand that Washington, D.C. as a Jesuit Catholic establishment under international maritime admiralty law, and once you begin to see how the system of the ancient Catholic system, the Jesuits, the ancient Roman Empire, the Phoenician Canaanite banking system is all part of a world dominating system. And once you figure out how the key to understanding all of this, all of a sudden the whole world opens up to you and you say, oh, now I see why there were twin towers in New York. New York, the empire state. You need to do some homework on the term twin towers and find out that it goes back to Jacob and Boaz of the Phoenician Canaanites. All throughout Europe, churches all had twin towers. You better go back and find out what is connected to New York and how New York comes from the York Rite in England. There's a very sinister, frightening, interesting symbolism that has been imposed upon this country, and the people have no idea in the world what's going on. So I'm just saying, if you want to open up a whole can of worms for yourself, and for the first time begin to see how magical use of words and terms and symbols are used, you need to start looking at the world of the occult in politics and religion. Like my mother used to say, there's never been a political movement in the world that wasn't a little religious, and there's never been a religion that wasn't political. Religion, politics, and commerce are the three legs of the stool on which world order sits. And all of this stuff today, Washington, D.C., government, banking, all goes back to the Phoenician, Canaanite system, and ancient Phoenicia, ancient Babylonian Sumeria. And this is why the work of Zecharia Sitchin is so important. This is where the kings of England get their concept of the divine right of kings. What are you talking about, divine right? All of this is part of a subject which I call ancient mysticism that dominates the Western civilization. I'm telling you, this is very serious, and it's absolutely incredible how much people don't know about this system. And I want to thank you for letting me introduce this concept to you.